Hi guys, this is Flo with Joseif and Lazo, and today we'll be talking about the future. So Lazo, what's the future of our society looking like?
Future of a society is looking limitless, although it would be, except we're not as far along as I believe we want it to be. So, guys, think about your sci fi dramas 40, 50 years ago. Think about where writers and scientists thought we would be. I mean, this isn't a big deal, but we don't even have like the flying cars that everyone expected. We're just about getting the electric cars only thanks to people like Elon Musk. And it feels like our rate of progression is slower than we expected. Or maybe it's because we were so fantasizing. We were just fantasizing with the concept that we'd gone to the moon and we're like, okay, so next thing is we live there. So I still say we're limitless, but maybe the rate of progression won't be as fast as we think. So I think in 50 years, everything will be much more technological, but I still don't think we'll be on the moon.
What do you mean by technological?
So if we look at how everything is becoming more and more electronic, so that could be your finances, that could be your everyday life, that could be that in certain cases now you can get a over the computer diagnosis from a doctor, right? Now that's a very big deal. Um, I feel like the way we incorporate our technological advancements like AI into our lives will drastically change and it will actually make our lives much more convenient.
Yeah. No, growing up, always like Back to the Future and films like that were always the things that society used to fantasize about. Going back to the past, going back into the future. I mean, forwards into the future. Well, technically, we're always going forward into the future, but we've not been able to do like consecutively those things. But we have been able to do things that are outstanding, like for example, nuclear power, electricity from basically something that we didn't think was anything big before, and using like
Wind and
the
electricity
internet.
and solar.
Exactly, internet, being connected through one server. Technically, this whole world is one big server now, where we can live call anyone from any part of the world. And talk to them, share our ideas, and this whole world is not just becoming a global village anymore. It's like a global household, man. Like you do one thing in one corner of the world, and another person speaking about it in the other corner.
Yeah, it's actually amazing how far we can reach now. Now, growing up, we had that in a way, didn't we? Because you could call back home, for example.
Definitely.
So I wasn't actually born in the UK, so I would have family outside the UK, and you would be able to talk to them. And for me, that's always been crazy, by the way, because you're taking this tone of my voice, and you're literally at the same time transferring it to someone who's God knows how many miles away. And now we're doing that at figure of speech, a breakneck speed.
Exactly.
It's scary to think that you could now hologram yourself. You can. I don't even know, man.
Yeah.
It's
In
mind blowing.
architecture school, you did something about this, didn't you? About Manchester in the future.
Yeah, so we always did an all school project, and at the beginning of our second year, we were proposing what Oxford Road would be like in the next 100 years. So we looked at climate, we looked at technological advancement. So just briefly touching on climate, we looked at how, for example, Manchester could potentially flood. But then you're like, well, how do you respond to that? And then we were thinking, well, what if people couldn't come in on a certain day? So then a proposition was given that you would attend your lecture electronically. So you would be at home, you'd be facing your computer, and that would create a hologram in, let's say, your seat in the lecture. However, you wouldn't actually be there, and the only person that would be there would, well, perhaps your lecturer. That's it. We're kind of doing that now, but we're doing it through Zoom, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, so I think this pandemic has pushed us in speeds that we were unaware of. Like this was always going to happen. Like we were always going to work from home. We were always going to have exams from home. We were always going to have lectures from home. But we didn't think it was going to happen like this. And I feel like adversity, personal adversity, and adversity as society always impacts us in a positive way somehow. Like we can't really thrive without some form of challenge. And this environmental challenge, like the pandemic that we have right now, has really advanced us technologically. And now we can communicate at rates, never before. Like really, like we're having online invigilators for our exams. Like the camera and the AI, right? is monitoring your eye movement to see if you don't cheat in an exam. So no one even has to be there, and you can set your exam timed properly. Like, do you get me?
Yeah, it's staggering. It's staggering. But do you think that, I mean, we've actually seen this happen before. So just to give everyone a little perspective, we've seen how technology has taken away jobs, and we saw that in factories. So the rise of,
Do you remember the first time everyone was crying about it was when till workers lost their jobs to, like, what do you call, self-scan machines, and everyone was like, nah, we're gonna, like, human race has gone to absolute.
you
Do
know
you get
what?
me?
I would take it a step further. I would say factories did this.
Yeah,
I would say the factories, the car industry did this. Packaging in general.
yeah,
Like if you go into an Amazon warehouse right now, okay, there's a lot of people working there, but most of the work is being done by a machine. They print off the labels, they tell you exactly where it goes. The AI algorithms are staggering,
yeah.
and they're only getting better. I actually think that corporations are holding AI back because they know the backlash it will bring.
100%, yeah. Like, there was a famous writer in the 20th century, and he said 100 years from now, which is basically now, that people won't work more than 6 hours a week. But we're not seeing this because work has become so essential that even though we have AI who can do all this, and we have machines that can do exactly what you say, right? But we also don't want to push it out there. Like, we're almost scared that we will be useless.
I think there was going to be way too much of a backlash because the problem is, well, this is a good thing. Humans like a sense of purpose. They need something to do. Now, if you turn around and be like, hey, you know what? Let's talk about Amazon again. It's a very famous example. We now don't need 100 employees at this factory. We now need only 20.
Yeah.
People are going to be like, what about me? What about my job? What do I do? And then, if I can slide onto this, unless you want to talk about something else, just you got to talk about giving people things like universal basic income.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if the society is doing good as a whole, then everyone should have a piece of it. For example, like one day we know that, like, if everything progresses the same way, there will be a time where literally there'll be one guy in the factory which will be guarding the factory, putting oil in the machines and taking care of its operation, and the whole factory can just run with its SOPs. And for that time where the whole society is doing well, governments are doing well, and more productivity is being made and stuff, then we should have something where that goes back to every citizen as a like a, as a fraction, as like a dividend, basically.
I think that will happen, and actually, I would say we're already doing that in certain societies. Not technologically, just to
Definitely.
kind of go off a tangent. If you look at Scandinavian countries, they have a privatized system of schooling and of healthcare, but then they give back to the people by paying them. If you look at places like Alaska and Texas, there are minimal taxes because of such things.
Yeah.
UAE, same things. So why are people so scared about universal basic income from a loss of jobs if we're already seeing how the government actually does give back to its
Yeah.
people based on its profits?
I feel like the scary part is that companies and private companies are doing this. Like, for example, you mentioned Amazon, right? So Amazon is a private company. If Amazon becomes the biggest company in the world, it's going to privately be profiting, not the government. And for example, if Amazon dodges tax, then the government isn't really earning anything. So unless Amazon and all these companies decide to give everyone money, which they have no reason to, then governments actually can't do anything. For example, if these companies aren't being taxed in the appropriate manner, and they're monopolizing basically, and they're taking over almost all our necessities and essential stuff. For example, in a world where if we don't even have supermarkets anymore, and Amazon is your supermarket, then is it Amazon's job to give you money back, which is a private company owned by a private person, right? Or is it the government's job?
Um, okay, so I'm gonna answer your question, but just before that, let me touch on some things that Amazon's already doing.
Yeah,
So Amazon has already given the plans for its Amazon shopping,
yeah,
where you go in, you're detected as soon as you go in, you've got a bank balance, everything you put into your trolley gets automatically counted and goes out of your balance,
as
so
soon
you
as
don't
you
have to
walk out.
pay for
Yeah,
anything when you walk out.
it's
But
mad.
furthermore, something that's even more realistic, which they're already looking to roll out, from their factory bases now, they want to get small deliveries that are up to £5 heavy delivered by drones for a 5 mile vicinity.
Yeah,
So do you know what that does? That means the Amazon delivery man has less work now. So they're
Also,
already doing this.
this would be amazing for quarantining, you know.
Not only that, I really think it makes the service better because instead of waiting for someone who might shift the wrong way, take a wrong turn, might be upset that day and might throw your package on the ground, this little drone electronic thing just comes and delivers it. I don't know, like, I don't see these things as a bad thing. I know that. Okay, let's go back to your point about should Amazon pay people, and this is where the backlash comes from. In all honesty, in a person like me who believes purely in a free market, no,
Then how can we have universal income? We can't
that's
have
the
it then.
government's problem.
We can't have it then.
Here's the thing.
If
no,
if you let monopolization happen and say that you want universal income, there's two opposite things because the only way universal basic income can happen is because of politicians. So if politicians decide that 50% or something of Amazon's profits are now going to get taxed and they're going to get delivered to the people, because
here's the
companies
thing.
have they have no incentive to do it.
Let me rephrase. The initial part of the question I was answering, for example, does Jeff Bezos have a responsibility to pay the common people who
No.
are now out of a job? Okay, no.
Of course.
However, does that mean you can't twist his arm into it? Yes, you can.
Yeah, you have to.
But that's what I mean when I say it comes under the government's jurisdiction. It is not the responsibility of any entrepreneur
Definitely.
to take care of anybody. It is the government's. So does that mean that they need to put new laws in? That's their problem. As far as I'm concerned, all of these entrepreneurs, they're doing nothing but good for our society. I should not sit down with Jeff and be like, you owe me money. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you owe me money?
Oh, definitely.
Like, he's already proven without a shadow of a doubt that he is given more to society than most people. And can I just say about this guy, and I'm not a Jeff Bezos apologist, but he's the first actual entrepreneur trillionaire. Do you know how refreshing that is?
Yeah.
To actually have a trillionaire who doesn't come from a monarchy.
Yeah.
Like, come on, bro.
Well, that's mad. Especially because moving into the future, we're actually going to have more of these monopolies on firms and stuff. And if we have more of these monopolies where a certain like 1% or even less of the population is that filthy rich, right? But the issue is the earth is also growing in population. So we had about 1.5 billion people 100 years ago, or 2 billion, and now we've got 8 billion. So we're exponentially growing every 100 years. So in a few hundred years, like if we have a population of 15 billion or something, does that mean, half, or no, actually half, 90% of us won't have anything to do? Also, the drones, right, you talked about, wouldn't that get a backlash for like security and, like people's privacy being, messed up with, basically?
I get what you're saying, but not in this case, because Amazon isn't proposing a drone that does anything other than what it's programmed to.
Yeah.
So it will leave the factory. It will go to your house if it's within 5 miles, I believe. It will literally, you'd only get your automated text message and email. It can drop it off on your porch and go. So this would be a heavily controlled drone, which could be hacked into, by the way. Like, there's potential for this drone spying on people.
But that's what I want to talk to you about. Like, with the rise of this technology, right?
Right.
We also will get this backlash of identity fraud. For example, if you had a twin, right, and he walked into your Amazon store using your Amazon candies, then he will, like, do you get me, misuse that? So, what do you feel about the sentiment of the human beings? Like, obviously, we're afraid of change, definitely. We're all afraid of sudden, rapid change. We hated this pandemic. So, and the things that came with it, like quarantining and stuff. So how do you think the human beings are going to react to this, which is already happening?
Honestly, it depends on your perspective. I'm personally someone who is willing to embrace that change.
Definitely.
I think we're showing that we're moving forward in life. I think we're showing that, like, I know that people are scared for their cybersecurity, but I got a newsflash for you. Companies already have all your data just because you started downloading certain apps. So if you're now scared about a drone delivering something to your house, you've probably given Amazon, Facebook, Google, all these companies all your data
I
already.
never replied to Nigerian princess.
Never replied at all. The first time, by the way, that we ever experienced anything like that, Mum got an email. I must have been 13. And at that time, because it was new, we were looking into it. Like,
But was he giving you his like riches and stuff?
he was telling me that he was gonna die and he wanted to pass his money on, and we were the lucky few. So then we were like, no. We contacted someone who's, a bit more
A real Nigerian prince.
Man, I would say in terms of cybersecurity, people have already given their data out. Governments already have cameras all over the place. Like, London is I think has the largest amount of cameras in the world or in Europe. So we're already looking at a society in which there's a lot of cyber control. There's a lot of, I mean, it's not directly called control, but we know it is.
Yeah, no, definitely, especially with what's happening in China. So as you know, like
Okay.
if
5G.
anywhere in the world, right, 5G cameras that detect your face,
Yeah.
they have finger print tracing and stuff. So they're kind of building a society where it's harder to commit crime, but also one might say that, you know, having your data out there like that, like especially with the government and stuff, and especially because regimes can change and stuff, how would people feel about that?
Right. So this is where we then get a bit, I wouldn't say biased, but you then judge
Yeah.
each regime as on its
Because
own.
they're not that open about it as well. Like for example, if they were open about your personal details and your belongings and stuff, that would be fine. But a society where you have all given everything away, your biological data even, and we don't know how it's being used.
Plenty of people have already given their biometrics, by the way. Like, have you seen the new passport system?
Yeah.
Like, recently, well, not during the pandemic, but when I was last on holiday, when I came back and to do fast track, what you do is you have to have your biometrics taken. Now, you can choose not to, but what they're doing is that once your passport expires, by then, let's say that's in 10 years, the law will directly require your biometrics to be on your passport because people can make themselves look like you using prosthetic faces, but they can't change your fingerprints and they can't change your eyes. So the government will use the excuse of security to get this information off you. But going back to your point, it depends on the government. Now, I know some people might think this is biased, but listen, at the end of the day, whatever you think of Western governments, you are allowed to make as much noise as you want on the street. You can fight for your rights. If you go outside of the West to a country like China or even the Middle East or even South America, basically anywhere outside the West, there are full-on dictatorships where your data, your information is taken and you will not dare speak on it. Like, you just look at what happened to Hong Kong, and this was technically not even the jurisdiction of China. And they went and they basically ripped up a treaty that was drawn 50 years ago, not even 50 years ago, right? They're bending people to their will. This is the difference between countries outside the West using your data and Western countries. And I'm gonna let you talk because I don't want to go on for too long. But then I've got another point to make about that as well. But you first.
No, no, go on. What's the next point?
Okay, here's my next point. Predominantly speaking, data usage in the Western world, whether that's by Facebook, Google, or Amazon, they use it for capitalistic values. By values, I actually just mean purposes. There's no real value to it. So when Facebook monitors your search history, when Google monitors your search history, it's not trying to control your life. What it's doing is it's like, oh, look, in the last hour, Huzaifa searched for a new podcast mic 5 times. So, Huzaifa, while you're on YouTube, we will advertise for you good deals on podcast mics. So that's how it works, right? However, outside of the West, when these countries take your data, they don't take it so they can help you buy what you want.
Yeah.
They take it.
Yeah, funny story from that actually. You know, remember like a couple of years back. I know you still play it, but
yeah,
you know
I
when
know.
Pokemon Go came out, right?
I know, yeah.
Yeah. In the start, like for example, if you had it asked obviously for permissions and stuff, but for example, I've been looking at Dr. Martin boots, right? So the exact model I've been looking at for quite a while, it would somehow like find my favorite Pokemon or like whatever, like a Pikachu on top of it or something.
It would make you go
And
there.
yeah, it would actually make you go into the store and check it out. So it's kind of like working with the agencies, and everyone was like this conspiracy of like, what do you call Pokemon stealing your data, and it's just getting big so that it can like, because that's the most expensive thing
But
in our
listen,
society, isn't it?
again, it's doing it for capitalistic services.
Yeah, but any service, right? Is that actually,
Which one's worse?
deceiving?
Of course it is. But we know they're doing it now, so it's no longer deceiving. Listen, if you're still using all of these platforms, and
Which you
you're still
do regularly,
complaining-
don't you?
We all do. Listen, if you're still using these services and you're complaining about Google taking your data, just stop using Google then.
But we
But-
can't. That's the thing. We
You know,
can't.
it's always a choice. Yes,
Yeah.
you can. But I don't understand why we're. Have you seen The Social Dilemma?
No.
It basically looks at how these AI. Well, Google is basically AI, really, if we're thinking about it. It just collects data, it collects algorithms, it looks at your pattern of behavior. So really, your phone is an extension of you.
It needs to do that to get better.
This form of AI that we have in the West, this form of data collecting, is actually for the people. Like, I understand that Mark Zuckerberg had to go to
Yeah.
Congress and he had to answer for everything, but no, listen,
Yeah, that was a bit
it's
more than just taking your data.
it's selling it to other companies as well.
Yeah, and using other countries to interfere with elections and stuff. But we won't go there.
Come on, we're not going there. We're not going there because the craziest thing is one of these main FBI agents went to Congress and literally said that we lied and we found nothing on Trump. So this thing is blowing my mind. Honestly, we'll talk about it in another podcast, but God help the Democrats, man. They're pissing me off. They're all pissing me off in America. Anyways, tangent gone. Honestly, man, I really don't think it's as deep as people think. I don't think Facebook taking your data is going to be how we're going to lose our freedom in the West. I just don't.
Yeah. No, you say we have options, but I don't think in the future we will have an option. Like, for example, for me to study or for me to, do essential tasks in society, I'm going to have to need to, sign into Gmail and use Google and, all these small engines are already like out of it. Like, do you get me? For example, I can't, do searches for, the best papers and stuff like that for university. It's all on, like, Google Scholar, let me tell you, right, is the best. Like, it's the A class. Do you get me? To look through. I know you get some shit papers in there, but it has the most. Do you get me? So obviously, like, I'm going to use that rather than like some next, search engine.
Okay, let me ask you this question directly. What is the worst that can happen from companies like Google having your data? What's the worst that can happen?
The worst that can happen, and I feel like it already is happening, is companies that, for example, employ you or something. They can look at your personal life, and I feel like we will start being judged professionally by our personal life from our Facebook or our Twitter, our views and opinions, all of those kind of things. And I feel like they will be there will be like another interview process in every job application where it'll be like, we're gonna look at your social media history.
Okay.
Like how we have like a DBS check. I feel like there'll be a section of DBS which should be like social media usage, and they'll test for like how your electronic fingerprint is like, and if we can employ you or not. And I feel like social media was an escape from day-to-day life and stuff. It was kind of like it's where our ideas and thoughts became wild, and it's where we could like discuss and have thoughts that we wouldn't have in day-to-day life. But if this happens, then we have no safe space.
But listen, you can be private. You don't have to give your social media account out to any company. What do you think?
Yeah, no, you definitely can. But I feel like you're limiting yourself if you're private. I feel like if you want to, you can. But you won't be able to interact. Like, for example, if you had a private Twitter, I can't retweet your post. If you have a private Insta, I can't show anyone your post. Like, if you want to really do that, you can do that. But you just limit yourself if you want to have some form of influence.
Right. I'll put it this way, right? In terms of people being judged by where they work. Now, generally speaking, if we're being honest, the type of people who are getting sacked for these things are not necessarily based on their singular tweets. It's based off their actions. It's based off what they upload. It's based off previous opinions. I think that's wrong. I actually, let's give a very famous example. Kevin Hart was exposed, so to speak, for making homosexual jokes on his Twitter roughly 5 years ago. And because of this, he decided to not host the Oscars. Now, when I saw that interview and the way he expressed his opinion, firstly, I thought one thing in particular, first and foremost. This man did it 4 or 5 years ago. He has a right to explain himself and to say that was a mistake.
Yeah, cancel culture, basically.
Cancel culture is using social media to ridicule people, but where did we forget that we're not perfect?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
These days, it literally feels like human beings are supposed to be like perfectionists in terms of every single action, every word we say. For example, if you made a mistake, or for example, we have viewpoints that keep evolving and changing. If someone had even a deviated view, right, even that, then they have some room for us to talk to them about it. What's better, like go against them like this, or actually sit down and converse them and be like, listen, like, why did you do that? Like, what made you do that? Let's talk about it and, have a conversation, right? Rather than just being like, nah, you're cancelled, bro. Like, this guy is going to be refuted, do you get me, by the whole world.
I've always for the most part, hated cancel culture, and I'll explain why. Now, when a man like Harvey Weinstein gets cancelled and ridiculed, that's fine. We're talking about sexual abuse through decades
Yeah, of
from
course.
power. When a man like Kevin Hart, now some people might hear this and you might very passionately disagree with me and say he made a homophobic tweet. We all make mistakes. If I sit with you long enough, I will show you your flaws. You
Yeah.
understand? A lot of people these days, for example, they don't like religion.
Yeah.
People have a right to say that you're wrong for that because we're living in a more secular
Yeah,
society, aren't
definitely.
we?
Yeah.
And, you know, as simple as I can say it is, can we just learn to once again respect each other and talk to each other and communicate? This is what social media was meant to do, but now social media has turned into outrage culture, has
Yeah.
turned into cancel culture.
Yeah, which is one thing I definitely want to talk about going into the future, right? The way we use social media. So you know where there would be like deviated views, right? Like even during the World War, there was like Nazi views that were held by British people as well. Do you get me? But the thing is, they were like small, isolated people and small groups that weren't really effective, and they were not representative of the majority. But now what we have is there'll be one lone wolf from Australia, right? And he'll meet his, people all around the world, and it'll actually become an online community and a platform where these people have a voice. So before it was just one or two people here and there in this village, in this town, and this city. Now we have hundreds of them, thousands of them, millions of them sharing views on, for example, a certain celebrity or a certain cult or something like that. And what we're seeing now is that these people actually feel like, they have people who express their views, therefore their views are valid, their views are normal to have, and then they start acting on those views as well. Like, for example, do you remember the shootings in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
The guy was streaming it live to his people on Facebook, and he was doing it as like he was playing a video game. So we see these negative aspects as well, and I don't know how we can address this in the future.
Okay, but that is
are we
very
gonna
extreme.
yeah, but are we gonna like no? I'm just using extreme cases so that everything else is covered.
Right.
So if we need to monitor social media, and there's also an aspect of social media we shouldn't monitor. But then who decides this? How do we monitor this? What's the perfect balance? And how do we educate our children to use the social media? Like, for example, the web and everything, like, should there be classes in school to use this? Because this could be dangerous if it's used wrong.
Okay. Firstly, I do not think it's the responsibility of any social media platform to somehow regulate your speech. Now, having said that though, it feels like we might need it. Then, like you said, the question becomes who regulates who? Whose decision is it? What we're seeing right now on Twitter, and we're seeing it right now, is the CEO of Twitter is quite a left-wing guy.
Yeah.
So a lot of right-wing opinions are being taken off the social media platform. So this is bias. Now, here's my proposition. I could be wrong. We have so far trained AI to do almost anything.
Of course.
To pick up on anything. So, here's what I think should happen. I think you train AI again, and you train it to an extent that you put certain words, right, in the section of violence, right? And then as soon as that's picked up, a red flag turns up, right? A human will then look at it, and if there's any indication that there's violent speech in this tweet, in this opinion, then you are to be taken off the website.
Yeah. This actually happens. So basically in Facebook, for example, there'll be these flagged contents, and these people who sit down in Facebook and actually monitor and take out these images or this spam stuff, they're working in the millions. So I remember there was this woman who was interviewed, and this was her professional job, and she said that she would look at like images within like 3 seconds and decide if it's to expose or not. Like, that's how like trained and professional these people were, that they would like literally click yes, no, yes, no, yes, no in literally 3 seconds to decide if this content is appropriate or not.
But this is why I'm saying AI needs to do this, because AI won't make the mistake as we do. Their chance of a mistake with the right algorithm is going to be 0.0.
But this will take a lot of time, because the thing is,
I think we have it.
Yeah, no, but the thing is, like, if I use those words, like you said, in a different tone, do you get me? But all the same words were there. Do you get what the problem is now?
But I see it as a two-step process. Firstly, the AI flags it. Secondly, the human confirms it.
Yeah,
Because what we have with AI is a significant bit of intelligence that has a specific algorithm to work on.
definitely.
However,
You'll follow a path, basically.
doesn't have necessarily free will or adaptation to its environment.
Yeah.
Right? So a violent tweet could be something about the UFC. I might talk about how one person just knocked out the other. So that might get flagged, but then it's for the human to say, oh, this is a sports related UFC tweet because it's a violent sport. But I really do think without AI, what you just said about
Yeah.
clicking every 3 seconds, we can't do that.
Yeah.
We really can't do that. It becomes too vague. And you got to think about how the human brain works. We all have different biases. We all have different thresholds for what's right or wrong.
Yeah, I suppose we can still follow SOPs and stuff. You'd be surprised, man. But the thing is, I definitely feel that AI needs to be put more into social media and into monitoring social media as well, rather than just some things just get taken off. By the way, like some things like AI, like I feel like it is in place somehow. Certain things you put, AI just reads it and it just gets taken off, and you upload it again, and then next time it doesn't. Do you get me?
But it also depends on how much you get reported.
Yeah.
So if you're on Instagram and you post something and you're like, well, why did my image get taken off?
It was
There
me that
nothing
reported
right.
it. It was me.
It was as if that reported it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like, don't
Actually,
judge me.
Yeah, it's never happened, by the way. Like I actually just reported something once, maybe,
Yeah.
and they've never got back to me.
But it
and
needs
was
to be,
actually-
but it needs to be a significant
Yeah.
amount of people, because sometimes you might just report someone for
No,
the
it was
sake
my
of
friend's fake account.
Oh.
Yeah, they were all like, "You'll report this," and we all reported it.
But
So
that's why everyone asks you to report these things, because unless there's a significant amount of requests, they don't
Yeah.
look at it. By the way, I think
it never got took down, by the way.
we've segued amazingly on to another form of AI. And you know how you said we need more AI in the media?
Yeah,
I think we should be thankful and would like more AI in the medical field.
definitely. Just before we go on to the medical field, I feel like this. I just wanted to ask you this before.
Go on, go
You
on.
talked about AI being like judging social media and stuff, and them doing it better with algorithms and stuff. I remember I watched a series called Westworld, and our first podcast, which was about consciousness, also relates to this. Do you think AI will ever have consciousness?
It can do. I definitely think it can do. Think about it. Guys like Elon Musk have done interviews where they have been visibly scared about the future of what AI can bring.
Yeah. So these
Now-
people are actually creating those things and are scared of what their potential is.
Yes, because it's one thing for Elon to sit down and make sure that the AI in the Tesla will recognize where the traffic is so it doesn't crash.
Yeah.
And that it follows the right map to get you home. That's one thing. Now, if you want to turn the AI into Ultron, for example, if any of
Yeah.
you have ever seen the Marvel movies Age of Ultron, or just Ultron in general if you're familiar with it, that's a very strong piece of AI which starts to learn and starts to create its own army. Now, okay, firstly, we're very far from that. But if we are talking about something which it does have a consciousness, that would need an incredible amount of technological planning and algorithmic.
I feel like
Technology.
quantum mechanics and quantum computing might be able to do that. Like that's the only thing I see, because this, standard way of the computers working, where it's like A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, right? Quantum mechanics is actually mad. Like quantum physics, guesses before it happens. So, like for example, if an electron can be in like 100 million places at once, right, or anywhere, right, and we don't know where it is, the quantum computer guesses where it can be. So it actually works ahead of the actual process. It's a bit mad, like, but I feel like if anything can do it, quantum computing may be the future.
I'm going to rebuke that and say that we're very far from quantum computing,
Yeah, definitely.
but I would also say we don't actually need it. Now, have you ever gone to a website where it said pick out the traffic lights in the image? That's you actually training AI.
Yeah.
Now, hear me out, guys. Follow this properly. If you train AI enough, I don't think you need quantum computing. If you train it enough,
Yeah.
it might not gain free will, but it might.
You'll
be
never
able
gain
to
free will like
determine-
that. Yeah, because
it
it'll
might
just
be-
get better at guessing what humans.
It will be able to determine what happens.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the example of the cars, the Tesla on the road, which knows where not to go and where to go to
Yeah.
make sure you're safe home and you don't crash. Now, this Tesla could also say, but if A goes to B and B goes to C, I can deliberately harm this human and cause a crash.
Yeah, but the Tesla's not thinking that. It doesn't recognize the human being. So
Everything is
I
a
feel,
pattern, though, isn't
yeah.
it? Like if we look at our human biological setup, we're billions and billions of neurons. So as soon as I make this one thing, see, look, I'm moving this finger. Billions of neurons have just been like,
Yeah.
just passed through my brain and all that type of stuff, right? I don't want to get into the biological side of it. It's the same thing with the AI, but it needs nodes. It needs the electric node. So when you look at the artificial humans that are made online that you can interact with, by the way, like you can sit down and look at this computer and talk to subject A, which is an avatar, right?
Yeah.
If this avatar has enough nodes and I think enough electric stimuli, it can make its own decision. Just like how if you have all
Like
these
Siri and
nodes,
stuff, basically, as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really, really think we don't need quantum computing. We just need to train it enough.
Yeah, no, I definitely think we need quantum computing.
Okay.
But I definitely think what you're saying will lead to technology becoming so good that it's almost like you can't like decide if it's human or not. But it still doesn't have it still doesn't have a consciousness. Do you get me?
Right, but do you need a consciousness in order to
No.
make a decision?
I feel like consciousness for robots will just be mad. Like that would just be scary, bro. But if we go close to it, where they're not actually conscious, but they can do pretty much like 90% of what tasks a human being can do, then I feel like what else do we need, man?
We're already seeing AI take over.
Yeah.
You think about companies like Google and Facebook, and
Yeah.
you might think.
I mean, I'm
there's
still a
thousands-
bit scared about like a Tesla like killing me and stuff, like running me over and stuff. But hopefully we'll go into a world where we don't have to worry about that.
No, I really, really think that if anyone creates an AI which is capable of killing, it will be done by deliberate means. It won't be a car trying to get you home.
Yeah, like the pandemic.
But if we
No, I'm
stay-
joking.
Wow,
I'm joking, I'm joking.
Okay. Are we
No,
going to
I
talk about
don't
Bill
mean-
Gates now? Okay. Is Bill Gates killing us?
No, he's not, bro.
Hey man, Bill, I think you're great.
I think I love Bill.
Yeah, Bill,
Bill, I
I think
love you.
you're wonderful, mate. Send me an Xbox, please. But jokes aside, because we did touch on the AI's medical aspect, but we didn't actually highlight what it's been doing. And there are a lot of people out there whose lives are being changed because through AI, we've been able to create for them bionic hands. We've been able to identify diseases quicker. We've been able to recognize them. For example, people who have ALS. There was a very famous NFL player actually who suffered from ALS and he had to leave the NFL and now he can hardly talk. At Google, they made a special. It's like Alexa. They made something for him which can specifically understand him, and he doesn't speak clearly. Yeah. So it's actually brilliant. I just want, even if we don't talk about this for too long, I just want to say that the medical advancements in AI have been so amazing, and they're helping so many people. People can hear again. Yeah. They have prevention of cancer earlier, and this helps not only in the West but in countries, for example, that are very overpopulated, like India or China, where doctors don't really have enough time. Like there's one doctor per, for example, 20 patients, whereas in the West it's like one doctor per 10. Do you know what I mean? One doctor per 5. So AI is really helping to get these visual images, look at these scans, tell you whether or not you're at risk, and honestly, the people that are doing that are by far the most important people right now.
Yeah, I suppose that there can be something already, because the thing is, we already know the information. So, for example, we know certain biomarkers are indicative of cancers. Then we can put that into a machine, and you can just, give bloods to that machine, and that machine can tell you that you have some biomarkers, and then you can be tested further or not. Definitely. But also, I was reading this research. You mentioned the point about, limbs and like hearing and stuff. And basically, you know how like salamanders, so these creatures, the amphibious creatures in the oceans, they can regenerate limbs. So they have a gene, right, that can regenerate limbs. Like if you chopped off its tail or something, it will come back. However, research shows that human beings also have that same gene. But after a certain age, like think about it really, like we came from a cell, we could generate all those limbs. But then after an age, when you're born and stuff, it gets turned off, switched off, and you can never get it again. So if an adult man or woman breaks their hand, they have to, they can't do anything about it basically. They can't regenerate it. But science is actually working with technology to be able to switch that gene back on, so that if you lose a limb, you can regrow that limb.
Are you calling me Wolverine?
We could all be Wolverines.
I want to be Deadpool. I want to be Wolverine.
Imagine that. Like that's like we almost like used to look at this in X-Men like mutants, but human beings have the potential inside of them in their genetic code to be able to do this. How mad is that?
I think it's wonderful. But even think about it though, we can do that in a more direct route. Like, if I cut my finger now, and this whole chunk of it comes off, it's gonna grow back.
Yeah, of course, but I'm talking about bones, bro.
Okay,
Like, do you get
bones.
me? Like the whole thing, your whole arm working in the same way it used to.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
genuinely crazy. I would love to see a world where that can happen. Not so I can break my arm and then have
Yeah.
it grow back, but just people get amputated, people lose limbs in war, some people lose limbs in dumb things. Maybe they're jumping off buildings or whatever thing.
Playing
doing
Pokemon
parkour. I was gonna think parkour, but Pogo. Whatever it is, it's like
Yeah.
it could be a car crash. It could be that you lost your leg in a car crash. But yeah, I think that's brilliant. This is what AI can bring us. I would trade this, by the way, for living in the moon for the greater good.
Yeah,
Now, if
like
you
I actually
personally
don't
ask
get
me,
it. Like, it's I always see that as a technological advancement of the human being, the first step on the moon. But the moon isn't something that entices me. I don't want to be that like out
But
of
wait, guys. Literally, today's the 27th, right?
Yeah.
On the go on if you're on Instagram, if you listen to this a week later because it's not uploaded yet. NASA put out a picture of the moon, clearly showing that there's water on there. So we're not actually as far off as we believe. Like, we can really go there. Like, there's
Did they
water.
actually?
Yeah, this was posted yesterday. Like, if we weren't recording with my camera right now,
Yeah.
I'd show you. A friend of mine actually just put it on their story, and I looked at it. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I need to check that out. That's mad.
Like, it's brilliant. It really is brilliant.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like a place that doesn't have an atmosphere, a place that doesn't like have food growing on it, a place that doesn't have everything that we're used to and we love. Do you get me? And we want to when we haven't explored like every ounce of our oceans. Like, if you actually look at the globe, 70% of it is water. Like there could be storms that come and go in miles and miles and miles away. No one would know about it.
You know what it is? I think there's two ways to look at it. Now, we know for a fact that we've polluted this planet heavily. So
Definitely.
maybe that's why we're not going into the water. We're realizing that companies are always dumping stuff in there. Because think about it, only up until a few decades ago, it was almost legal to just dump things. Like, for example, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they just dumped so much on the coast of Africa. So they got their weaponry and they dumped them in the land, and then they got some of their other pollutant stuff and they just put it in the water. Like, maybe the reason why we don't try to design in water and live in water is because we know how much badly we've already messed it up.
Yeah.
Because I would
Maybe.
love to live in Atlantis.
But I
really would.
Yeah, no, I feel like the Atlantic Ocean, for example, maybe like that, but the Pacific Ocean, the ocean where if you were in the middle of it, all of like what you call around you, like the whole face of the globe in that is water. Like 30% is land, 70% is water. 70% meaning that if you were in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right, for miles and miles and miles with every single direction, everything is water.
That's actually
How
brilliant.
mad is that to think about?
But don't you think to an extent it's almost harder to design in that water, which is God knows how deep it is?
Yeah, but it doesn't take any fuel. It doesn't take any rocket fuel or the spaceships that we make.
Okay, but what would your proposition be? Because if you said, for example, let's create an underwater neighborhood, because on water is different, by the way.
Yeah,
If you wanted to create a whole area of housing,
which
that
happens by the way
floated,
on
does.
water. Yeah, that
it
actually
does.
happens.
That it does exist, and also countries like the Netherlands have designed their housing in a way that if it floods, it will still survive. But I think the logistics of going deep into that water, creating a foundational base, creating a whole master plan for it, that's where you struggle. And also bear in mind that the deeper you go, it's actually blinding.
Yeah, no,
You don't even see anything
no,
anymore.
definitely. One thing I've been really interested, just generally with water, is aquaponics. So basically, it's like a sustainable system where you can grow like fish in water, and they excrete nitrogen and like gases and stuff, which help the plants grow in water. And it's like kind of a sustainable environment where you can do fish farming and grow crops at the same time in one closed system.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, in the future, we'll need stuff new ideas, right? Like growing upwards, for example, in buildings rather than growing, sideways into the land, and like other things that will help feed people in the future as well. And oceans will definitely come into play where, when we have the lands of fertile land, right? All of it being used, like especially in the UK, like we don't have any spare land in the UK. Like it's all being used either for
Come
living
on, we
or
do.
no, we don't.
We have spare land.
We don't. Everything's being used either architecturally. Everything has a purpose, basically. Like for example, the lakes, right? They'll have like farmland, and they'll also have tourist land. Like, do you get me?
Oh,
To
right,
see,
okay, okay.
and then they'll have like cities. So everything has a use, a purpose now. So in the future, where the population rises even more, and right, you can't build on everything. You can't build off top of a volcano because the granite and the molten rocks and stuff is so hard that you can't grow plants there right now. Anyway, maybe secondary succession and stuff later on. But we can definitely use the oceans because plants don't really need soil; they just need water to grow and stuff. We can use certain crops and stuff like that in the oceans, maybe on the surfaces, maybe inside. You know, it's definitely more feasible, I feel, than going to the moon. I don't know what fascination we have with sci-fi and stuff, though.
Honestly, I used to when I was in architecture school. I'm very 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 obsessed with water. Like I really am. I love to swim. I love oceans. I've always been that guy who, like, for example, if you're at the beach and they have those things that they say don't go past it. I'm the guy who likes to go past it, and then the lifeguard is like, "Can you get back, please?"
Yeah,
So, as
it's
scared as I am
beautiful,
of the
man.
ocean,
Yeah,
it's mesmerizing, and I would love to see the idea of people designing there and designing within the water. But honestly, being familiar with the architecture world, I feel like at this moment in time, if we could, we would have already.
yeah.
I really just think it's
There needs to
not
be more
feasible.
advancement in that,
And
doesn't
also
there?
think about it, you're going to be polluting. How can you weld a building under the water without hurting the
Yeah,
environment?
this is the thing. This is if we actually go into doing this, this will be one of the things I feel like in the future will care for the environment because if we're actually using the waters and we're actually like going into the waters ourselves and having plants that come out of the waters, then we will actually have a better connection with the ocean. We will try to use what do you call renewable stuff. We'll try to pollute less. We'll try to do things in different ways
You got to
than we
think
do right
about.
now.
I think you got to think about the actual animals in there because
Yeah,
if you go into the Pacific or anywhere and you create, let's say, an underwater hotel,
yeah,
that space can no longer now be used by any of the animals that were there,
yeah.
and that includes from the smallest plankton to the shark.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's why I feel like we should use spaces that we have destroyed, like coral reefs that we have destroyed and polluted, to bring back life there and make it more sustainable for the plankton and the shrimps and the fish.
But they're sustainable without us.
Yeah,
So if we
so
were to create,
because we've already messed it up, I'm thinking like for example, if there's destroyed 1 kilometer radius of coral reef
probably
destroyed,
it was that simple. But go
yeah,
on.
then we could go back in there just like we do in the lands, right? And draw things to that place so that when we start creating those chains back how they used to, they'll kind of balance themselves out anyway. But we basically create an environment where it's mutually beneficial to both, like we have done in the land. For example, we mutually what you call use other animals which have mutual goods from us as well. Like, do you get me? Like, our pets and stuff like that. And not all farm animals, because some are being mistreated really badly, but like horses and stuff like that. Do you get me? Where we could create that kind of environment in the oceans as well, where we go there to look at the majestic nature of the oceans, but also give back to it as well. But I feel like because we're distanced from it and we can't see it. For example, like the soldier killing someone in the battlefield is thinking that I'm acting on someone else's command because he's not actually like, and the person who's there can give that command because he's actually not there. But if we actually go there and see this for ourselves and start loving the world more, right? Then we'll give more back. We'll give back to it more. There's the famous Canadian astronaut. The guy who's like singing in the space station, and he like gives you tutorials on like how to sleep on the space station, and he's got a mustache. I'm forgetting his name.
He has a mustache. I should know who he is.
Yeah. So basically, he actually said that his favorite planet used to be Jupiter because of its rings and stuff. But then when he went to space, he goes, after looking at the Earth, he goes, that became my favorite planet. Like, it just looks amazing, outstanding. Like, when you look at it from afar. Like everything is so perfect. The oceans, the blue, the greens, the whites of the clouds, how it's changing all the time.
We have
The
everything we
lights.
need here. But let me take your point
Yeah.
back, by the way. You know, you talked about fixing well, not fixing, but trying to find a way to mend the coral reefs, right? Here's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to ocean life, the biggest problem is water temperature,
Yeah.
especially by a reef, because the concentration of oxygen in a water molecule is less than the concentration of oxygen in the air. So for us, when it gets hotter, when the average temperature in the UK goes from 28 degrees to 30, it doesn't do that here, but if it did, we would be fine. Now in water, because it would that heat would directly affect the oxygen concentration in that water molecule, the slightest half degree shift will practically wipe out every species of fish there by the coral. So when we talk about the coral reefs and we talk about bringing them back, just finding a way for the coral to breathe to bring some life back, yeah, you can do that, but the fish won't return.
No, but we're always doing that anyway. Like the temperatures of the oceans have been depleting by the minute. Like, do you get me?
Exactly,
And
but
since
that's my
Industrial
point.
Revolution started, like for over 100 years now,
Global
we've been
warming.
doing that to the water by not exploring it anyway. Do you get me? Like I would highly recommend everyone to watch what do you call that movie on Netflix, My Teacher Octopus or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really good what do you call it? But I feel like we definitely need that thing with the seas as well, which is like 70% of
The seas
where
are
we live. Do you
different.
get me?
Like global warming will affect the reef more than it will affect the actual center of the ocean. But I think right
Over
now
time, it'll definitely affect everything.
I think
Yeah.
designing right now in water is a bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah, but we're talking about the future, don't we? And I feel like we
Yeah.
definitely need to have this explored because we indirectly affect it all the time. You know, the melting of the ice caps, the increasing of the concentration, changing of the temperature increases the acidity of the oceans and the oxygen concentrations in it. So
Which is the biggest part, the
yeah.
oxygen concentration.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
those
And acidity. You know,
fish.
water, 100 degrees water is more acidic and also more alkali at the same time than because the concentration of both is affected. The water remains neutral, but with temperature changes, it can become more acidic and more alkaline at the same time because of
think-
dissociation. So having some organisms will definitely not survive it, and some will, and they'll completely take out some organisms to extinction, whereas other organisms will just proliferate so much that they'll destroy their own ecosystem, and then they will get extinct because they won't have the stuff they used to feed on. Do you get me? So any form of interfering in terms of global warming and stuff, it will always have a detrimental impact on stuff that we just overlook. Do you get me? We definitely need to we didn't need to look over nature. Like nature looks after itself. But the thing is, now that we've messed it up, I feel like now we should go and see how we can correct it.
I would argue that as well. I would actually say right now, even at this point, nature is taking care of itself. Because here's the thing, right? Humans right now are getting to a point where we're like, we want to control everything around us. We talked about this in another podcast, but nature adapts. So I just told you that with the oxygen concentration, certain fish die, right? Others will take its place. Nature is very unforgiving. Nature is not like humans. Nature does not look at life and think, I need to save this part of Antarctica. No, nature's like, if you're going to melt in 100 years, that's fine. Something else will happen. Something else will take its place. However, we are the ones who are making this harder than normal, because if you think about it, within our history, which is, depending on where you stand on this, millions of years, right?
Yeah.
We have only now been able to actually control most factors around us to an extent that we can say that, oh, well, we want to fix the melting of the polar ice caps, right? But nature's been like this forever, and it's not given. We've gone through, how many ice ages have the world gone through?
2
ice ages, if not 3, possibly 2. But the point is, nature's not like us. It lets things happen. Whether it's we that fuck up as humans or animals or
but I feel like we've
itself.
fucked up the things so fast, and like literally we've been around for millions of years, and in this 100 years we've fucked up the earth so fast that the earth has not got time to, just like we haven't had the time to morph into something new with the coming of social media and all that kind of stuff. Like our fingers are still the same, our hands are still the same, our brains are still the same. We still react to a tweet the same way as we would react to a lion chasing us. Just the way that we haven't changed, our minds haven't changed. Just the same way we have, exposed nature to things that it would not have had in millions of years. And I feel like that's the only thing that's the worrying part. Otherwise, definitely, nature always adapts. And like you said,
I think we underrate
yeah.
it. Look, I think
no,
we
no,
underrate
we
it.
100%.
We underrate it because they can't talk back to us. We
Yeah.
underrate it because
Well, it talks back to us all the time.
the earth
Yeah.
can't turn around and be like, oh, look, I'm in pain. No, man. I really think even if we were to carry on as we were,
Yeah.
the world would find a way. We're the ones who are panicking. We're
Yeah.
the ones who see Greta Thunberg talk for 5 minutes and we start crying because,
Yeah.
wow, this is the biggest mess on the planet. No, like, chill.
Yeah. No, but I definitely
We'll
think
be
like
fine.
it takes a
We should
day
be
to
more
wipe
worried
out a
about
section.
ourselves.
Yeah.
We should be, okay, a day to wipe out a section
Of the
rainforest.
Amazon, right?
Okay.
But then it takes it thousands of years to get back to how it was.
But listen, it takes one earthquake for us to go into extinction as well.
Yeah, but with the technological developments and with the usage of more and more what do you call carbon products and like oils and gases and stuff, we're actually making more tsunamis and more hurricanes happen because we're messing with the code of nature, the
So
gases
let's talk
in the
about
oceans.
energy. This is a brilliant segue. Let's
Yeah.
talk about new energy because right now people want renewable energy.
Yeah,
Now here's a problem with that.
nuclear. all the way.
We really haven't maximized its potential yet. So
No.
when you talk about solar energy, yes, solar energy is great, but solar energy can't be stored properly. So
Yeah.
what then? Would you then prevent us from stopping fossil fuels and tell the people of the West or wherever country and say, you can only have solar energy for as long as we can store it,
No.
and we want to stop using oil?
Yeah, I feel like we need to basically become. You've highlighted the issue perfectly. Energy is there for us to use. Sun is going nowhere right now. Like, do you get me? We have all the energy within the changing of the earth, within the air. We have energy everywhere basically. But the thing is, we need to store it better. For example, maybe have chemical reactions happen that reverse. For example, break down water into like hydrogen, oxygen, something like that. That after the sun is gone, then those chemical reactions can happen again to give us renewable amounts of electricity back. Do you get me? So making electricities and stuff and batteries better. Maybe not alkaline batteries, but maybe like what do you call other chemicals that release water as a byproduct and oxygen as a byproduct. Do you get me? So that definitely needs to happen where we need to think about how to store it better because it is there. Like we can just make more and more and more solar panels and get more electricity, but until we can't store it better, until we can't keep it with us for a rainy day, then there isn't much advance that's going to happen in that area. But the main thing I want to talk to you about
There's
is
one thing. Can I just say something?
Yeah.
There's one thing that's very underrated that we don't talk about. When we talk about greenhouse gases,
yeah,
we automatically assume any use of it is bad. Okay, firstly, it's not. To get the world to where it's been today, which is heavily affected by global warming, this has been a effort or an indirect effort of the whole planet. Okay. Whether America alone or France or the UK or the whole West shuts down and stops using greenhouse gases, you will not stop the melting of the polar ice caps.
no,
We
it's a
need to
process
go
that's
to-
been triggered now.
It's here's the thing. It's not even about how much will we stop it. This is a global effort that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there who might be listening to this and have the misconception that if their country stopped producing fossil fuels or stopped using them, we would be fine. No. You would need at least 70% of the countries to stop.
No, it's a global effort, but for example, countries like Canada, UK, America, China are rich enough to say, okay, we're going to do something about it. For example, you can't blame Ethiopia and Tanzania and
No, they
Sudan
hardly have
where
anything.
those places have, like, some places there have 2 hours of electricity a day. So we can't blame them and say, oh, they're the ones
That's why
causing
I
global
said
warming.
60-70% of the
Exactly.
countries.
So now that we've used these resources to push through a boundary, and now we have such good advancements, and we're technically in the lockdown. I remember the UK was running for certain weeks with just renewable energy. How amazing is that? Like, do you get me? And because we can afford to do that now, we should be looking towards making the world a better place. Whereas if those countries could, and if they could, like, nail down the basics, then they should as well join the race.
There's another thing as well, though. America's done something recently. I don't have the exact figures for it, but it's actually found a way to produce less greenhouse gases, but it's not in the way you think.
What?
So, America's found a way to produce less greenhouse gases, not by using less, but by making its own. That's also a big deal. The transportation of the oil, for example, is just as polluting as using it. So, what that means is that America's recently found a way through fracking, which a lot of people don't support, is self-sufficient.
No, definitely.
But I also have an idea. I could be wrong. This is, we're just sat down talking. We could find a way, forget storing solar energy. Like you just said, certain countries only have 2 hours of it a day. What if all the solar energy in Los Angeles, what if we found a way to transport that to North Africa?
Yeah.
And can we do that?
With the oceans.
With the oceans. So, can we though?
Yeah, of course. We can make like underlying like pipelines and stuff.
Because we right now...
but we have like wires and...
We transport internet and...
Yeah, but why would we do it from Los Angeles when Africa has more sun?
No, because then you would have to set up the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So this is where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
This is where the problem comes in.
Why don't we give Africa the ability to make the infrastructure?
You know what the problem is? It's capitalism.
Yeah.
This is one of the downsides of capitalism. It's actually not capitalism itself which is stopping us. Capitalism is a way for you to make money. It's a method. It's people. It's people not wanting to go to a place which is very rural, not very advanced. They don't want to start everything again and set up. So they would rather focus on these other countries and make themselves feel better because they've been able to power Los Angeles for a week using solar power, which I don't think they've even done. I honestly don't know. But the point is, instead of storing, what if we transported? Would that not be a good way?
It would, but like you said, like transporting it would have to make pipelines from Los Angeles to Africa, where thousands of miles.
No, why not? Why not? If we can look at internet cables, look at internet connectivity.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Pipelines to have cables inside.
Underwater though.
Yeah, but that would be stretches of like thousands and thousands of miles. It'll be easier for them to take that money that they wanted to build the infrastructure for it and just give it to, making sustainable developments in Africa. But on that note, let's wrap up, man. Joe, do you have any final thoughts about the future?
Man, I'm looking forward to it. Honestly, I'm not someone who shies away from change.
Definitely.
I'm very happy to see advancement. I'm very happy to see what AI can bring us. If you're watching this and you don't realize, it is in the middle of a pandemic, so we have to wear our masks even in the studio. But to summarize, I'm very, very excited to be living in a day and age like this. This is the best quality of life any human has ever got. Our life in the West cannot be taken for granted. Our life on this planet should not ever be taken for granted. I'm excited to see what the future holds. I'm excited to see what I can achieve in the future using AI. And man, those are my final points.
Yeah. No, definitely. And let us know what you feel about our podcast and what you feel like we should talk about next.
Subscribe, share, Instagram.
Definitely
anything.
tell us what you think about the future as well, what your ideas about the future, our collective future, and the future of the human species.
How normal do you think robots will be? That's my final question.
Perfect.